Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome to this webinar hosted in conjunction with GS1 Ireland and TrueCommerce. And the topic of today's session is how to streamline your EDI. I'm delighted to welcome our Gold Solution partners, TrueCommerce, to this session. You're all very, very welcome. And I'd like to thank you in advance for taking the time to attend this session. Hopefully you'll get what you need from it. We've quite a busy agenda and we're going to get through quite a number of topics. My name's Maria Schrader. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager with GS1 Ireland, and I'm here to, to host and introduce this session. And joining me on the webinar is Keith Gallagher, the Regional Sales Manager for TrueCommerce. Keith looks after the Irish customer. So Keith, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. As mentioned, I look after our Irish operations, both new business and existing business here in Ireland. TrueCommerce, as an EDI business, have operations all around the world. Focusing on Europe, we have offices in Ireland, a couple of big offices in the UK, and also Denmark. So we have a good regional spread across Europe, and we have another large aspect to our business over in the US. So in terms of doing EDI worldwide, we are well placed for giving advice should you have any needs for connecting with any partners worldwide.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, so for today, as I said, we do have quite a comprehensive agenda, lots to talk to you about and share with you. You'll see on the GoToWebinar panel that there is a chat or Q&A feature. So if you do have any questions about the topics that we're covering, or questions in relation to your own business and the use of EDI, do pop us the question into the chat panel and we'll take them at the end of the Q&A session. This session is also being recorded today, and we will make both the recording and the slides available via email after the session. So just to put in context for you, I suppose why we're both collaborating on this particular webinar. GS1 Ireland is a standards body, and we're hosting this webinar as part of a program called our Solution Provider Program. GS1 Ireland in itself is a standards organisation, so we're not a commercial body. We don't produce any software or hardware, but different providers out there in the marketplace use GS1 standards to build solutions, software, hardware, etc., and make those available to industry. And through the Solution Provider Program, we come together, GS1, solution providers, and also industry partners, to find ways of collaborating, bringing people together so that everyone gets the best use out of the solutions that they're using, best use out of the standards, and to make sure that they actually deliver the benefits that's intended, whether that's saving money, cutting costs, increasing automation, making your businesses more efficient. So TrueCommerce, our gold partner, as part of this program, and have been our partners for quite a number of years. We're delighted to have them on board. And I suppose our particular emphasis for this webinar and for partnering with TrueCommerce is really to grow awareness in industry of the benefits that EDI can bring to a business in terms of efficiency, automation, and cost cutting. So we're delighted to host this webinar, and I'll hand over to Keith, who's going to run through the main body of the webinar, and I will be back to you then in a short while.
Okay, back to me. So yeah, just to have an overview as to what we hope to cover today on the agenda. So we're going to have a look at what is EDI. So those that are approaching for the first time and have been asked, are you EDI compliant? It's often a scary one to deal with first and foremost. We're here to make sure that that's not scary. We'll give it a quick encapsulation as to what is covered within EDI and how we accommodate that then for you. We'll look at the benefits of streamlining your EDI and consolidating your suppliers, because I guess a question that I get asked time and time again is, we set up with business X or Y and they use this provider to do their EDI. Do we have to go with them? And I guess the most simplistic way of looking at things in that case is like a mobile phone network. So if you're calling someone on Vodafone, you don't necessarily have to be on Vodafone. And EDI is the very same as that. So we're able to connect with all networks around the world, and you shouldn't be too concerned about the standards that they use on the other end either. We're going to look at web EDI and integrated EDI. So typically when you're connecting to big retailers or big manufacturers, they will have their own EDI and they'll be asking you to get on board. So in that case, they are the hub and they'll often give a couple of options on this. So full use or traditional EDI is definitely the main one that we see there, but also we see web portals in use more and more. We do supply a few of these web portals and we'll cover that in due course. But it's just to give the distinction between the two and where there might be an advantage of one over the other. We're going to have a look at the process of switching from one to the other. So just because you have initially set up on one platform doesn't mean that you're fixed into that platform forever. If there is a benefit to putting it all on one system and having a single service provider, which we believe there should be, we can look at how you get from that scenario now to where you can be with our solution. We will look at the EDI Managed Service itself. Certainly our proposition in terms of EDI is a little bit different than what else is in the market out there, in that we are a fully hosted managed service provider. So we will look after your EDI on your behalf. We don't expect any in-house EDI knowledge. We do pick that up and we're responsible for getting your messages to your partners in a timely manner and in the correct format. We're going to also just mention the option of eCommerce, which is something that TrueCommerce have added to their solution. So it just allows you to connect with all customers, be they EDI enabled or not, and just makes it a more friendly solution. So with our solution, we're always looking at enhancements to see how we can get more and more of your partners on board using your system and automating the processes along the way. A key part of this and any EDI is GS1's role within it, which is the focus on GLNs, barcodes, and how they come into play in EDI and why we rely on them so heavily. So what is EDI? And yeah, it's electronic data interchange. And when we say that, what do we mean by that? I guess if we think back to how we exchange documents with any partner, be it a customer or a supplier, the typical documents we would expect to exchange with one another and have the highest volume on are the likes of orders, invoices, credits. And EDI just allows you to exchange those with your partner in an electronic manner, so that we're not handling a lot of paper across the business and that it can be machine readable on both ends of things. So for example, if you're sitting on a Sage system on your end of things and your partner has an Oracle system or an SAP system on the other end of things, we have to come up with a common communications protocol to allow us to exchange these messages so that each system can understand it on their end of things. EDI allows that, and not even to the degree of just relying on having a Sage system or an SAP system in place. It even allows us to take those what would have previously been manual entries and allow them to be entered into the system so that they can be received in electronically. We'll have a look now and see what all can be covered by it. So we mentioned, I guess, the main ones, and the ones we see for the vast majority of volume are your purchase order, your invoice. There are other documents that are exchanged by EDI today. In fact, they're pretty endless. If you can think about them in paper today, there is a fair chance that there is an electronic version of that. Typically within Europe, we use the EANCOM EDIFACT standard. You will also come across some other standards, particularly if you're based in the UK, along the lines of Tradecoms, or if you exchange with the US or further afield, you'll see a lot of ANSI X12. This is really inconsequential to you. This is just the format or the container that the messages are contained within, and then you'll have a protocol to exchange that. Again, it shouldn't have a huge knock-on effect to you. It's just how we get the message from A to B. But yeah, if we look at case in point and examples here within the marketplace, your big retailers here in Ireland, so your Musgrave, BWG, Dunnes Stores, invoice credits will be used across the board there. If we look at Tesco UK or indeed Republic of Ireland, the advanced shipping notice is used quite heavily there for delivering to depot. And also they will use an EPOD or an EGIN, which is your proof of delivery and your goods inwards notice. But the important thing to remember here is once you elect to trade with a partner on EDI, they will have a message implementation guide. It will outline the messages in it. As a provider, we're quite aware of what each of the retailers will want on their end of things, but it's just an indicator to you as to what they expect from you. There is a message in place for it. We can accommodate it, and they have a specification around it. So even if it was a brand new connection that we hadn't came across it before, we can follow the message guide, and it will give us a full outline into their message spec and how they expect it to be exchanged. So why would you look to consolidate your EDI suppliers? For me, it's always going to come down to this, is that I guess when we're initially green to it and it's the first time we're approached with it, we sign up to whatever we feel is the most convenient or fastest way to exchange the message with it. It might not always be the right way or the most efficient way, but it's the most one, it's the closest one to touch. You may have set up with multiple EDI partners and not being aware that there was an option to put it all on a consolidated system. So what we're trying to achieve really by putting it onto a single partner is to have a single process, a single system, because what can happen if you elect to have multiple platforms is that you have to train staff, you have to keep on top of having different billing cycles with each of them. Each of them will have a very different process as well, and it can just get very complex to deal with multiple businesses on it. Typically with EDI, if we can put them onto a single system, it just means you've got one port of call. So if there's any faults or errors along the way, you've got one partner that you contact and they can help you with it. We're trying to keep the expense down, so you're not duplicating costs, which we'll typically find if you've got multiple systems on it. And just in terms of having a time efficiency on it, being able to do a single process across the board with all of your partners, because typically they will use a similar message set. So at the end of the day, your connections are gonna be pretty similar to one another. So if you're facing one retailer, chances are that the next retailer you contact with them will be doing a similar message set. We'll send orders, you'll send back invoices. It's trying to put them all in line so that you're getting the most efficient setup that you can out of it. So web EDI versus integrated EDI. When we look at the retailer setup that we have in UK and Ireland, we come across quite a lot of the big retailers, so Sainsbury's and Dunnes and Musgrave all allow for a web platform to absorb up, I guess, all suppliers. So in their world, they do not want to be taking paper into their environment at all. And how they accommodate this is that the bulk of their big transactions will come in through traditional EDI or integrated EDI, as we have stated here. And to allow them to absorb up the rest of that, they will have a web portal offering. We do offer the web portal to the retailers. It just allows that a smaller supplier or someone that hasn't got a huge amount of volume going through that particular retailer can log onto a web portal using a browser, manually put in an invoice detail and send it across. And on the retailer side of things, then they don't get a different viewpoint of any of their suppliers. It all comes in an EDI container. So just looking at the web EDI, it's specific to the retailer. The processes can vary. So even though we provide the platforms for both Sainsbury's and Dunnes stores, both will use different message sets, both have a very different interface on it. It's very bespoke to them. So you could be using TrueCommerce for both retailers and find that the process is quite different. But it does allow you to quickly get set up and accommodate the needs of that retailer. Particularly if you only have a short run or a trial with that retailer, it might be worth looking at the web EDI as an option on it, or as new messages come on stream. So with the likes of Dunnes stores, we've seen that come in recently, where they had a dispatch advice come on with a very quick turnaround on it. And for suppliers, it was a very easy process then to just do it on the web EDI rather than put it immediately into their integrated system. It is focused on low frequency invoicing because it is manual entry. Some do allow an upload of a CSV file or an external file, but for the most part, they are dependent on either spinning around the order into an invoice or by manually creating it. So that's why we always think that it's a volume-led decision as to whether you jump from one to the other. Typically, the other jumping point that I would see to go from one to the other is if you have multiple web portal platforms, it may be time now to look across and look at an integrated EDI platform. Web EDI typically has a variable cost set by the retailer, so they will dictate based on your turnover how much you should pay for the web portal. So this can be quite a small amount if you're a very small supplier into them, and it can be cost effective to do it that way, or it can be a larger amount, and if you've got multiple web portals, again, you can consolidate them into an integrated EDI platform and potentially make a saving as well as an efficiency along the way. There is no software required. It is all carried out in a web browser, and that is certainly a good selling point on it, in that it's very easy for uptake on it, and it needs to have that. If we look at integrated EDI, it is a generic platform, so it's completely badged to you. It doesn't have any of the retailer logos on it, so it just allows you to connect with any EDI partner that you might have on the other end of things. It connects to account software. So what we're trying to do there is, because you're already entering the same details into your account system, the idea of duplication into an EDI platform is just counterintuitive. So what we try to do is connect up to two platforms, so that it is only a single entrance on it, and it means that your account system is always going to match up to your EDI, which is naturally very important. There's typically, in terms of cost, it's broken down into a setup and an annual service, and that's dependent on how many messages you're connecting and who you're connecting to. But it's certainly worth inquiring as to how much a system would cost in your case. It's also a web-based application, so you're not losing anything on that side of things. It can be accessed from anywhere and will still have that connection through to your ERP. And yeah, one of the key benefits is that you've got a single service provider, so you can connect all of your EDI partners through one system. So how do we go about consolidating it? And from a service provider, this is a pretty straightforward and standard question for us. So people ring us every day of the week and ask us, we use this partner, this partner, and this partner. How can we bring that all together? And we do manage that process. So effectively what we do is we calculate the system build and what's involved in it. We'll send across a proposal to that. Once it's back to us as an agreement, we can then give a time plan on it as to how we move from one to the other. Typically what we like to do is do this in parallel. We don't want to disrupt any of your live transactions today. We want to keep the money coming in naturally from your live accounts. So we'll do it. The safest way to do it is to set up the EDI in the background, do all the testing with the retailer, which we manage. And at the end of that, we can turn off one platform and switch across onto the consolidated system. Yeah, and that's effectively, I'll give a look at how our system works effectively now as well. So the TrueCommerce EDI solution, our platform is called One Time. It's called One Time for a very valid reason, in that how we see it is that you connect to us once, and then we can replicate out of your system then for each and every partner that you want to connect to it. So once we have our orders, invoices, etc. set up on our system, we can then map into the other side of the equation, which is your trading partners on the other side of things. We're responsible for all of those connections and the message formats along the way. So it's no more complex than contacting us and saying we need to connect with Dunn's, Musgrave, Tesco, whoever it may be on the other side of things. It doesn't matter if they're with us or not, we're able to connect to them. You don't need to give us a huge amount of detail on it. We'll tend to know what the connection is and how we're to set it up. The message standards and the protocol is inconsequential to you. There is no hardware or software required. It's all done in the web offering. It is proactively managed by us. So once we have an outline of the system that we are building, we will prompt you for any information we need from you in terms of barcodes, GLNs, etc. on that. And then, yeah, it's a fixed annual fee. So we like to have a single annual payment for your EDI and not have the variables going into each year of, I'm not sure how much my EDI is going to cost this year. If we look at the one-time system and how it's broken down, this is the most important display as to how our system works. So one time sits in the middle as a hosted managed service. We connect into your ERP. We see everything behind that dotted red line as being your responsibility. Once the documents are correct in your ERP and the connection is connected to us, we are then responsible for each and every message that you traded with your trading partners. We'll take them into the one-time format, and then we'll exchange it with your partners on the other side. So if we look at the customer 123 there, you can have any of the retailers there. Format is inconsequential, and also the protocol is inconsequential. We do proactive monitoring on our system, which is somewhat different than some other EDI providers in the market. And what we mean by that is that we are constantly monitoring not only the messages as they come into our system to see that they are valid and will pass on your partner side of things, but also that the live connections are there. So the last thing we want is to take a message from you, you expect it to get across to your partner, and it sits in purgatory with nobody looking at it. We look at each and every message, and if there is a failure or a problem along the way, it is on our backs to fix it and to make sure that your messages are picked up in the format that you've given them and exchanged with your partner in the format that they require, and you have full visibility of this along the way. We also have a business-to-business platform, and this allows you just to connect with customers that may not have EDI today, just to give a more immersive, I guess, experience. So from your perspective, you still get the order in an electronic format as if they were an EDI partner. But from their perspective, they've got a full front end similar to a web store. It allows them to see product information, costs, pictures, select quantity on it, and once they submit that as an order, then that will be sent across to you in an EDI format and pulled into your ERP. So particularly useful for those that have a huge product catalog or have a high volume of their customer facing as not being EDI friendly today. So it just gives another solution on that. But certainly we would encourage anybody that has any transaction queries to contact us and see if there is a solution out there for them, and we're usually able to accommodate all of your scenarios out there. I guess the way of looking at it is there should be no real difference to what you're doing today to what others are also doing. So chances are we have came across it before. To see how that fits into our world, just on the top line there, we have the e-commerce platform latches into the top. So it just shows that your whole world can be brought in through the EDI system, be it supplier facing, customer facing, and in this way, actually even customers that haven't got EDI today. I'll just pass back to Maria now, who will just give us an overview of the GS1 standards and how they come into play, because they do have a very, very important role within EDI.
Thank you, Keith. And I have to say, even though I've been looking at EDI for quite a number of years, I'm even learning, I suppose, new things today and nuances as to, how it all works. And it's great to see the way that it's constantly evolving and growing and bringing the whole e-commerce and omni-channel aspect into play as well. So I just very briefly want to cover, I suppose, where does GS1 fit into all of this, and the role GS1 plays. Our ethos really as an organisation is to I suppose really put forward the benefits of using standards. Over the years, it's very easy for solution providers to come along. They spot an opportunity, they build solutions, which is, I suppose, their process as a commercial organisation to do. But the one thing that really helps make all of this possible is because somewhere at the bottom, at the foundation of all of these systems, there are standards. So it's, I suppose, to use Keith's analogy earlier from the mobile phone, it's whether it's standardized numbers, standardized connections. Obviously the world would be an awful lot simpler if we all had standardized plugs and sockets and things like that for our phones. But it just shows you the benefit of bringing standards, that it does make life and work easier, more efficient, and it does eliminate cost. So just to look, GS1 standards in themselves, it's quite a difficult concept for a lot of people to get around. And what we say, we're kind of a supply chain and data standards organization, and we have many standards, and these are really sort of technical specifications or ways of doing things, and they fall into 4 broad categories. and many of you will be familiar with them. So the first area of standards we have is around identification, and that's really numbers. So if you look at, you know, if you have a bottle of water on your desk, or, you know, a food product in your cupboard, you'll see the barcode on the back and there's the number. So that's a unique identifying number for that particular product. So that's aspect one of the standards. The second aspect is around capturing that information. So that's the scanning of the actual barcode symbols. The third area of our standards is around data. And really here what we're talking about is specifying the structure and format of data, which is very much what we've talked about today in terms of the messages, the electronic messages for EDI. So how those messages are structured, the size and format of fields, if you're putting data into your database, bringing it into your system, that we know that the barcode field has to be a certain number of digits, and so on. And the fourth and final area of standards is where where all of those components are brought together and solutions are built. So any of you, for example, in the food industry will be familiar with traceability solutions or production systems, where you're using a lot of these standards and technologies around identifying products, capturing information and sharing information, but all in a standardized and consistent format. And GS1, as a not-for-profit organisation and a membership organisation, we're here to help you, to help industry, to help companies leverage this for the benefit of their business. So we're here to help, we're here to answer questions, and we're here to show you how you can save money and make more money in your businesses. So today, obviously, we're very much zeroing in on the component of data sharing, which is where EDI falls, and the data sharing covers a number of areas. One is what we call master data. So this is, say, for example, the specification of your product. So the name, the brand name, its size, its weight, its flavor, its color. So again, all of those components in your database are standardized and made available to share. EDI, so on the transaction side, it's very much those messages Keith was talking about. So sharing your order message, your invoice message, your dispatch advice message in a standardized and structured format. And moving forwards then, looking at things like product catalogue, so exchanging all of that master data in a catalogue. So within the GS1 identifiers, the barcode is one obviously we're all very familiar with, both either through business or through our personal lives as consumers. But in parallel to the barcode number for a product, there's also a number called the Global Location Number, or GLN. And this is one of the GS1 standards that identifies an entity. GLNs are used in a couple of different ways. One is to identify a legal entity, so your company as the issuer of an order or an invoice, so it's sort of a legal identifier for the business. They're encoded into the header part of each of those identity messages, so it's very much like a mailbox number or an email address essentially, so that regardless of the which provider you're using and the messages, that they can be attributed to a particular legal entity. There is also a GLN that's used then for identifying physical locations. So if you're an organization with many deliver to or ship to points, each of those physical locations, such as warehouses, factories, etc., can be identified with a global location number. And again, these are all used within the EDI messages. So on this final slide then, I just have a quick, I suppose, summary of the process we're very familiar with, obviously the sender and recipient, so the seller and the buyer, and the messages are exchanged back and forth. And we've just highlighted, I suppose, there the most common messages and the sequence. So obviously the purchaser sends across a purchase order. When the goods are dispatched, there's an electronic dispatch advice. The recipient will confirm receipt of the goods. Invoice is then issued and payment is processed. So again, within the context of those messages, the structure is defined by the GS1 standards, and the identifiers like the GLN that I've just mentioned, the GTIN, which is the official term for the barcode number, and then very importantly, the SSCC, or serial shipping container code, can also be included. This one is very key to the dispatch advice messages that Keith has mentioned that a number of the retailers are now rolling out. And this is really, I suppose, that connection point between the physical shipping of goods and the electronic flow of information about them. So this dispatch advice message will list these SSCCs, and when those SSCCs are encoded as a barcode on a pallet or on an order, it links the contents of the pallet back to the order and invoice message. So that's kind of the crossover point where everything comes together. For those of you that are a bit newer to EDI, together with TrueCommerce last year, we launched a little guide called The Beginner's Guide to EDI, and it's very much a non-technical overview of a lot of the information that we've covered today in terms of what is EDI, the differences between web and integrated EDI, and how to get started. Obviously it's an area that's full of acronyms and three-letter words, so that's free there for you to download either from TrueCommerce, from our website, or if you look in the control panel of the GoToWebinar, there's a section there called handouts, and we have a copy there that you can download in PDF format. Okay, that's just our contact details. Obviously, I've covered off who we are already. So Keith, I suppose I'll just hand back to you for a second, and you can just check the control panel and see what questions have come in. If you can.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Okay, so I can spot there's a couple have come in there. I'll just fire these at you, Keith, and put you on the spot. So one person said, I'm currently uploading all my invoices through a portal. I've just got one new customer. Do I have to keep using the portal, or can I switch to an online or a traditional system?
Oh, okay. It's a very valid one with today's topic in mind. So that's very much what we see across the board, is that people are using a portal, and then it comes to the point of adding a second or a third. At that point, there is a consideration as to moving across to EDI. You can set up with the new partner on EDI initially, and bring across the partner that you trade with on the portal today. There's no hindrance to doing that, and it allows a nice smooth switch over from one solution to the other.
Yeah, I suppose actually that's a very good point, is it's, to do it in small steps and not try and, to undertake effectively two projects at the same time to get the new one up and running and then migrate the existing customers.
Absolutely, and traditional EDI will allow you to connect with absolutely anybody out there. So just because they have a portal out there, it doesn't mean that you have to use a portal.
Okay. A second one in there in relation to the GLNs. Somebody asking how many GLNs do I need?
Yeah,
They're
very
trying to
valid
figure out
point.
between
Yeah.
services and customers.
Yeah, so I guess you covered it on your GLN slide, and it's one of these ones, so it just depends how you use it. If we look at it from a strictly EDI perspective, as to if you have a consolidated system, how many GLNs do you need to attribute against it? The main one is against the mailbox. You don't need a different GLN per mailbox. You can use a single mailbox in the same way you'd use a mobile number to connect with multiple different people. But we would definitely recommend, if you've got multiple locations or legal entities and all, having a separate GLN for each of those. It will just all tie back to that one GLN as your mailbox. But in cases where it might be vague or you're not sure, please contact GS1 or indeed TrueCommerce, and we'll be able to advise on that. Your GS1 GLN should always be purchased from GS1.
Okay, brilliant. And there's actually one other question there again around the whole topic of consolidating the suppliers and migrating to one single provider. And I think, yeah, we've covered off a lot of that in today's session, but I will also just point out we do actually have a blog post on our website that talks about transitioning to a new supplier. So we might just include that link maybe in the follow-up email as well after that, for anybody who wants to root through a bit more. I know we have our contact details there as well on the next slide. So if anybody has a question either about about an EDI solution, they can kind of get in touch with TrueCommerce, or if anybody has a question about the standards and how to use them, or maybe they're using them a little bit and want to get more benefit out of them, they're more than welcome to contact our help desk here as well. So that's it from me. I see we've just gone 5 minutes over, which is not too bad going. Thank you very much to all the crew in TrueCommerce for working with us to put this webinar together. And as I said, if anybody has any questions, they can come back to us.
Okay, and thank you from me also, and thanks for your time today. If you do have any follow-up questions or want to have a quick chat, by all means, just drop a line, and I'm more than happy to run through your specific scenarios with you.
Great. Thank you all.
Thanks all. Bye.